Good morning, students. Hope you're all doing well. Now, in the last video lecture, we already spoke about how the Harappan civilization was discovered accidentally. We spoke about Charles Mason, who is credited with finding the Harappan civilization, but unfortunately he did not understand its importance because he was a British soldier. He had no expertise, and whatever he thought about the ruins of Harappa came to be incorrect. Now, another person who actually had experience in the field of archaeology but still could not make sense of the Harappan seal that was given to him was Alexander Cunningham. He noted the peculiarities about the seal, but he failed to place it in a time frame which he was familiar with. So that was one problem. So now we'll actually look into the person who announced the discovery of Harappan civilization or the Indus Valley civilization. So he was known as John Marshall. So John Marshall was commissioned by the then Viceroy Lord Curzon based on his professional experience which he gained while he carried out excavations in Greece and Turkey. He is also known for a number of contributions he made to Indian archaeology, or you can say he made to Archaeological Survey of India. Just a few things I would like to mention. He carried out conservation and preservation of monuments. He laid specific stress on that. Now, why is this so important? Before this, you remember, whatever excavations that were carried out, what the in charge of those monuments did was they carried these priceless artifacts or objects directly to the British Museum. Okay, it was not being preserved in India itself. So this is one important change that he brought. He established museum. He laid the foundation of one very important museum, that is Takshila Museum, so that whatever excavations was being carried out in Takshila could be stored in these museums rather than being sent abroad to the British Museum. Second thing, he allowed Indians to participate in the excavations that were carried out. Now this is very important because up till that time, no Indians were taking part in the investigations. We had a colonial mindset till then, and Indians were not given very important jobs even when they were qualified. So John Marshall was the one who allowed the entry of Indian archaeologists into the fields. He also modernized the entire Archaeological Survey of India by dividing India into archaeological circles, you can say. Okay, so entire India was divided into 29 circles, and excavations were carried out in these circles, and then they were studied upon, and then they were filed and kept for later date. So these are few changes that he brought about in archaeology or Indian archaeology. Now, it was this very John Marshall who sent his proteges Dayaram Sahani and Rakhaldas Banerjee. So they were Indian archaeologists who were made directors of excavating these particular sites. They were given independent charge. So Dayaram Sahani went to Harappa and he carried out certain excavations where he found a hoard of Harappan seals. At the same time, Rakhaldas Banerjee found a number of seals, similar seals in Mohenjo-daro. So this finding of similar seals at both these sites led John Marshall to assume or think that these two seals or these two sites were a part of a single civilization. Okay, and this civilization, when they carried out the carbon dating and chemical analysis as well as whatever the archaeologists do, so they found out that these civilizations were much older than that of the Mahajanpads. So in 1924, based on these finds, he finally announced the discovery of Indus Valley civilization. Okay, now there is a very important quote given in your book. Underline it or make sure you remember it. S.N. Roy noted that in the story of Indian archaeology, John Marshall left India 3000 years older than he had found her. So this statement is just reiterating the fact how important his discovery was, not only for the subcontinent but even for the entire world. देखो, when you think about the Indian colonial mindset or the Britishers mindset, they always, why they had this entire notions that Indians were inferior, they were not capable of self rule. So all these excavations, the kind of planning, the urban planning which they saw, the drainage system, such an advanced civilization, and that also so many thousands years back, made them realize that India was not what they had presumed to be. So this is a very important contribution of John Marshall, that he actually gave the Indian civilization a date which was much older than what was previously thought. And not only this civilization was exemplary, or it was even comparable, or it was a contemporary of Mesopotamian civilization. Now, so in spite of being credited with announcing such a major discovery, he had some faults in his technique. To understand the fault in his technique, we'll have to know about certain techniques related with archaeology and certain terms related with it. Okay, so first let us look into the terms and then we'll come across what was the fault in his technique. Now, firstly, what is a mound? So when an archaeological site is to be excavated, the thing you have to do is the archaeologist look for a mound, an archaeological mound. So what is an archaeological mound? An archaeological mound is a site that has been occupied over centuries. Okay, one century, one generation of people occupied it, okay, then left it. So maybe it was ravaged by time or plundered, or it was destroyed by flood. So this site is then kept in isolation for some time. So debris gets collected over it, but so एक तरीके से देखो तो वो गुम जाता है, but the artifacts in it just gets buried amongst in that debris. Okay, now a few centuries later, another group of people might come and settle over that site. Now they will use the debris of that previous civilization as a foundation to build their own houses. Okay, so in this way, the same site is being occupied over generations and over centuries by different set of people. The same site will have a number of cultures thriving in it. So if you slice through these archaeological mounds or layers in a particular manner, each layer will represent one cultural period. So that layer will be known as a strata, or a layer representing one cultural period or one subcultural period. So what was the problem with Marshall's technique? When he started the excavation of the Harappan mound, you can say when he ordered the excavations, he said that the excavations were to be carried out in a horizontal manner. He think of it like slicing that mound at particular intervals. But that does not mean that each interval that he ordered the excavations to be carried out would contain the layers of one particular period, okay, or one particular culture. It can be two cultures combined too. So that was the problem. He carried out excavations at horizontal lines. He ignored the stratigraphy or the layer of culture that could have been there, and thus a lot of important information of it was lost forever. These artifacts which were found in the various horizontal sections were not categorized into the layers which should have been if proper procedure was carried out. So we'll now look into the person who rectified this faulty technique that was being used by John Marshall. So this person, known as REMFela, he took up charge as the Director General of ASI in 1944. So he detached himself with the methods that were used by his predecessors. He followed the modern technique in which the mound was to be excavated along the stratigraphy or along the strata rather than the horizontal excavation of the site. So this method which he introduced, which was very modern in technique, is followed till date by his students. Even REMFela is credited with carrying out a number of changes in ASI. One such thing was that he allowed students from different universities or professors from different universities to come and take part in the archaeological excavations. So this is, you can say, a departure from the previously held notion that archaeology should only be done, excavation should be only carried out by trained archaeologists. No, he allowed the graduate students or the professors to partake in carrying out excavations too. The next period which followed was obviously the partition of India in 1947. Now with the partition, these main sites such as Harappa and Mohenjo-daro automatically fell into the kitty of Pakistan. Now that did not mean that India did not have any sites. Till then, only a few settlements were discovered. But since excavations was an ongoing process, the excavations continued to remain at many sites in India, and later on it was found out that some of these sites, as recent as in 2014, that some of these sites such as Rakhi Gadi was even bigger than that of Mohenjo-daro. So excavations did not stop after partition. Keep that in your mind. In various regions such as Punjab, Haryana, the Kutch region of Gujarat, excavations continued, and many such settlements of this site came into forefront. Now, with the passage of time, new issues are being focused on. Okay, so instead of trying to reconstruct the political history, emphasis is on obtaining a proper cultural sequence of the civilization. What does that mean? So instead of trying to figure out who was the central authority, who the people were, how did they manage to control this entire civilization, they are focusing on more people centric view. How did the people live? Okay, what were their way of thinking, their religious belief? So excavations or answers are tending more and more towards being people centric. Another issue which the archaeologists are trying to find is why certain sites were chosen as the location of this civilization. What was the logic behind it? Now, why is that? When you study some sites right now, you'll come to know that some of these sites are found in arid regions of India. It is not so hospitable when you think about it. Okay, it is not so easy breezy to live there. So archaeologists question why did they choose these spots. Now some of these questions have been answered already. For example, the satellite imaging has shown that there was a river. There's a mention of ancient river already in the Vedic text, and even the satellite imaging, they corroborate with it. They say that there was a river known as Saraswati which ran almost parallel to Indus river. So this river might have been where these settlements were based on, or the valleys of this Saraswati river was where these sites were located on. But later on, this, due to earthquake, this river changed its course and joined on to Ganga. That's what they say. So that is one of the reasons. So the more questions they ask, and later on with new technology, they can come up with more and more answers. And finally, whatever artifacts, the huge wealth of artifacts that they have discovered from various Harappan sites, whether it's the pots, the seals, or the beads, so all they try to do is place these artifacts in the context in which they were used. So that is one another thing that archaeologists try to do. Now, what are some of the recent historical trends that have happened with respect to Harappan civilization? Since the 1980s, a lot of international interest is being shown in these sites. Obviously, one such international organization that you can think of which will have a lot of interest in preserving these sites is UNESCO. Another thing, there is a use of lots and lots of modern technology to carry out investigations regarding these sites. Okay, one such thing is satellite imaging. Most recent ones can be the drones. Okay, so what do they do? Why is it so important to use this new technology? If you get a proper picture of these sites, it will become more easier to ensure that yes, this is the site where we can carry out the excavations. It definitely has some remains hidden beneath its mound. There will be no it's not a hit and trial method anymore. We can actually say through by the use of this new technology that yes, there is a site which is hidden below the mound which needs excavation to be carried out. Okay, so this is it for today. You'll be getting your set of assignments and go through the topics in the next